Okay, well, welcome everybody. Um, as you saw, I think one of certainly our biggest class, and the whole thing that we do with music, I think is there's something about this community, and I think the emphasis that this community has put on music has really shaped it. But I loved being there, and I was in the center of the choir, and Tanya and I were just traveling with the choir on their last tour here locally, and then also in Lancaster. And it's been a real pleasure. So I do appreciate the choir members who've come out as well. All right, so Anya just gave me 15 minutes also, so I have to also go real fast there. I liked your... So we're very blessed with the students. And I just thought I'd throw a few pictures in there for my talk on Anabaptist education. But Anabaptist education is people. And not just ideas, but community. And I'm blessed with this is our resident students that are here. And this is the very room I wanted to show you just a few months ago. And now we're just so blessed that the community came together, and now you're standing in this room that you see there on the picture. The choir is the biggest thing that we have at Zollikon, and it brings a community together from lots of different backgrounds of Anabaptist churches, and we're blessed with that. And I'm so blessed with how music is so an important part of what we are. Just a few more. That's the old building, or the other building where we have for our dorms, and again, just some students that we have that are there. So the topic that they gave me was the importance of an Anabaptist education. So it's an important topic for me, and I thought I would say a few things and sort of a disclaimer when we talk about it. But when we talk about an Anabaptist education, we believe that the whole person, there's an emphasis on not just the head, but a mind, character, your conscience, so you don't float above in like a lofty cloud, but you sink into the soul of just fruit and obedience and following Christ. We believe that young people flourish when surrounded by mentors who not only teach, but also live it. So one of the things we're emphasizing in the Anabaptist education is the idea of mentors and having local pastors and local mentors and people part of that education process. And we believe that learning should train the student not merely to succeed, but to serve. And not merely to rise, but to bow. And not merely to understand the world, but to transform it through quiet faithfulness. And to answer the assignment specifically, I don't want to present Anabaptist education like it's some better than everything else. And so there's a sense of, superiority or something with that. However, I do think it's very important to unapologetically realize that we are a community of people, that we do have something to say, and it needs to be said in our world that we live in today. And so we are trying to represent that community without apology and look at those things that we think are worthy of passing on. So, in education in particular. So, I think of our society, our country, the Western civilization. In many ways, we could say that our society is broken. And I think a lot of people would argue that higher education was one of the bigger wrecking balls that led to the destruction of the Western civilization. And so I don't think we're going to fix our country with the same kind of blueprint that we have that's what's actually hurting it. And so one of the things that I think we should ask when we're looking at Anabaptist education is, why is our education system broken? And my experience in different education, what have I learned from that? And I think if you could nail it down to one thing, taking ideas apart from a community, taking just book learning and that sort of thing, which is important, I'm going to show the importance of that, but having it still ingrained into the community, where the community, there's things you just can't put in a book. There's things you just can't just teach in 5 points or this sort of thing. And bringing that sort of experience both in the church world, the business world, the family world, raising children, the music world, bringing that community together, I think is a vital element in Anabaptist education. So how are we going to do this education? So I'll give you an example here. Coming here, you think of Anabaptist education. When I first moved here, I found this newspaper article. I took this directly from a newspaper article. How many people here know Atlee Kaufman here? Yeah, a lot of you. Okay. And I found this newspaper article, I kind of, I don't know, chuckled at it because it was really stressing this idea, him saying, I'm not educated, all I have is an 8th grade education. Curious, how many people in this room have nothing more than 8th grade education? Excellent, yes. But Atlee Kaufman obviously is not just educated to an 8th grade education. It's the type of education that, and all the rest of you too, I know you, that brings into this that we have to be able to tap into in a way that's different than your conventional education. Interesting, this is a busy slide, but I'll explain it. The article went on to explain the jobs that have been developed here in Holmes County. And if you look at just over this chart right here, we're looking at some of the population of Ohio. These are jobs, and the creation of jobs and that type of thing in employment. And you see U.S. was down, Ohio was way down. But when you were looking at some of these Anabaptist locations, the statistics were completely different. And so looking at that was something significant. I read in this newspaper article, this is years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and I was very blessed with this. But there was another one, I've showed this in other talks, but I think the elements are very important to see. This is in the Wall Street Journal last year, and they did some studies and looking at all the different counties in America. And so when they did that, let me switch over to, when they did this, they looked at everyone. And we're talking Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles, and everything. And what they were looking was one perimeter. They were trying to look at new growth, like in a business that would bring in new jobs, new wealth within an area that did not have it. So in other words, you weren't born in a big business, but yet you created new jobs, new growth, and that's what the study was trying to look at. And they looked at every county in America. Every county in America, and they found Holmes County number one. Holmes County number one in this. And it's interesting and a little bit comical, but definitely interesting of the points that it brings out. Here I highlighted this little article right here. And it says, so that, remember, the whole idea of these people from Ohio State, Harvard, business, trying to look at the thing is there something here? Is there something here in Holmes County that we could somehow help that growth in the rest of the whole country? And that's the kind of things we want to be said. So they said this. And then one of the things they were talking about is the extreme networking effect. That is a key to Anabaptist education. Extreme networking effect. And it went on to say, while other counties can't necessarily replicate this cocktail, they can draw on key ingredients, Partridge said. And then this is the funny part. He says, there's no real reason you have to be Amish, he said. You can have tight social networks with effective social organizations, chamber of commerce, businesses, organizations, and other kinds of nonprofits. Things like Zollikon Institute. So the idea of seeing businesses and churches and nonprofits and working together is something that they're seeing as a success. So again, community. And this community education then is something that's making a difference that I think even the whole world is noticing. So here we go. Number 1, Holmes County. Number 2, LaGrange County, also a very Amish area. Number 10, Tuscarawas County. That's the entire country. That's not just Ohio. So I think it's when I noticed this, and it made me say, okay, there's many things I think, again, not tooting our own horn, but as an educator and Zollikon Institute, our job is not trying to fix you. It's actually having you fix the next generation. How do I bring in these kind of community resources? That's a success. Call it 8th grade education or not. I'm saying there's a different kind of education going along there that needs to be brought into the way we do education here at Zollikon Institute and with Anabaptist education. One of my favorite slides, this, anybody know? Besides you all, your choir members have seen this 15 times. This is the workshop of the Wright brothers. And I love it because it tells you a lot. What are they doing there? They're just tinkering. They're putting stuff together, they're welding, I don't know whatever they did in the early 1900s, but this kind of an education is different than just book learning. And it's practical. Now, it's interesting, if you look at, not a single person working on that team, including Orville and Wilbur, had a formal college education. Some didn't even finish high school, yet they were educated, very educated. They had a dream, a passion for knowledge, and they had a community that backed them. And we know the story that on December 17, 1903, they put to flight. Now, it's interesting. There's a guy, I won't go into detail on him, Samuel Pierpont Langley, who they thought was going to invent the airplane. He was the president of Smithsonian Institute. He had degrees from Harvard and everywhere else. He had the Navy with him. He had an unlimited budget. And he created things, but he never did it. Matter of fact, if you look at his monstrosities, it's funny. I actually found some pictures. These are new, guys. So he built this thing that was in the middle, and it would catapult the planes out. And he was trying to invent the airplane, and he was supposed to be the guy who invented the airplane, but none of us had ever heard of him. But the other guys with the tinkering ability did. Here's an actual picture I found of it crashing. So it was humiliating when a bunch of guys with a community came together tinkering and brought in people who were trying things and failing and trying again, were able to pull things off, and they're the ones that did it. So in our history, this is not to downplay things like Bible study, the patristics, and things like this. If we look at some of our Anabaptist heritage, Balthasar Hubmaier had a doctorate degree and learned and skilled in Latin debate. Conrad Grebel studied in Vienna, Basel, and Paris. Felix Mons was trained in Greek and Hebrew. Minnow Simons was educated on canon law and theology. Michael Sattler, a former monk, knew Hebrew and Greek and was working there as the head of the education at his monastery. Pilgrim Marpeck, very interesting educated, as a civil engineer, actually loaned money to the magistrate before he became an Anabaptist, and worked in a way, in a very practical way, with both Christian education and practical education, and was one of the major leaders of the early part of the movement. They read scriptures in the original language. They handled it with care. They engaged with the church fathers. We see this now coming out very clearly. The Dutch Anabaptists also gave networks of pastors and educators and writers in the very early days of their work up in Holland. They met schools in kitchens and barns and cellars and forests. Their libraries were hidden chests and hidden in attics. They preached many times illegally. They were arrested. They were tortured. But they still kept these emphasis. Yet they produced letters, catechisms, tracts, confessions, careful exegesis, and serious thinking. Did not get a bunch of fancy degrees. They had a rigor. It was a different kind of rigor. They studied in obedience, and they served the church with their entire life. And their rewards was in heaven. So, what's the approach that we get from that heritage? That education should be the whole person. That truth must be lived out. That we place Scripture at the center, read it, discuss it, and try to put it into practice. We value teachers who are models of discipleship, not just educated with the mind, but bring in people from the pastors and missionaries and business leaders from the community. We pursue serious learning, Bible theology, history, languages, while being anchored in faithfulness. And we cultivate schools that are extension of our homes and our churches, places where people are guided, mentored, and known. People actually know you and can speak into your life. We pass on a heritage that is not exclusive, but joyfully unapologetic. This is our heritage, and this is what we have. Our goal is not to mirror the world system, but to carry forward the Anabaptist vision, scholarship and service and obedience, education and service of the church. Just a few, almost done here, just a few pictures of how we're now bringing in local business leaders has been a real blessing. We're going to keep doing this, and also bringing in different of the church pastors and things away. Community, again, is our emphasis. So how do we take this heritage that's in your blood, bring it into this world that's confused with so many things online and all those sorts of things, and be able to raise a generation that can hold those values? That's what we're trying to do. Actually named after community, we empower the individual through community. So that's what I have. You're going to get a little bit of a mini class. Stay tuned. And Michael Miller is going to give us a little mini class on Old Testament history. And that's our campus right down the street, guys. And so anyway, so it's a pleasure to tell you all about this, and I'd love to talk to you about it afterwards. I'll be there at the table to sell you T-shirts and to sign you up for those courses. But I'll hand it back over to Cordell. Oh, to Michael, straight to Michael.